Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to step into the shoes of a top management consultant and solve a classic business case, the discount brokerage race. Our job is to cut through the noise, figure out what's really going on, and give our client a single data-driven number they can act on.
So, here's our game plan. We'll start with the client's strange situation, this growth paradox. Then, we'll frame the exact question we need to answer. After that, we'll slice and dice the competition to find who really matters, project out the race, and finally, deliver the consultant's verdict.
Okay, first things first. We have to get to the bottom of the problem. Our client is in a spot that just doesn't make sense on the surface, and it's up to us to make it crystal clear.
Now this is the core mystery, isn't it? I mean, 10% revenue growth, that sounds pretty good. Any CEO would probably be happy with that number. But here's the thing about business. Performance is always relative. You're not just competing with yourself from last year, you're in a race against everyone else.
And this right here, this is the battlefield. We've got a full market snapshot of 12 different brokerages. Seriously, everything we need is in this table. Who the players are, their revenues, their growth rates, and how the rankings shook out. So, let's go find our client in the middle of all this. Let's zero in on our client, Company F. On one hand, it's a success story. They grew by a solid 10%, adding a cool $60 million in revenue, but in the grand scheme of things, that success actually led to them dropping in the rankings from 6th to 7th, and that is the paradox we're here to solve.
So, you see, the issue wasn't their absolute growth. That was fine. The problem was their growth relative to everyone else. They were running a pretty good race, sure, but someone else on the track was just running a whole lot faster. Growth never happens in a vacuum.
Okay, so we've diagnosed the problem. Now what? Well, the next step, and maybe the most critical one, is to define the objective. Because in consulting, having a clear problem is great, but it's nothing without a clear goal. It all comes down to asking the right question. And there it is. The client has given us a beautifully specific, quantifiable question. They don't just want to do better, nope. They want to know the exact growth rate they need to hit to snatch back that number 6 spot next year. This gives us a laser-focused target. Now, before we start crunching numbers, we have to lay down some ground rules, or assumptions. The big one here is that all of our competitors are just going to keep growing at the same rate. Now, is that realistic forever? Probably not. But for this case, it's the rule of the game. It lets us turn this messy, strategic problem into a clean, predictable math problem. Right. Now, a rookie analyst might try to track all 12 companies, but a great consultant knows that's a waste of time. You have to focus on what actually matters. We're going to use a classic consulting tool called MEIS, that's mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive, to break up the market and find our real competition. I mean, just look at this whole table. It's a lot to take in, right? It can feel kind of overwhelming. So where do you start? Simple. You start by getting rid of what doesn't matter. Let's start slicing. First up, the big dogs, Company A and Company B. With revenues way over $900 million, they're playing a totally different game. They are so far ahead that they have zero impact on the fight for 6th place. So, boom, we can just set them aside. They are not our problem today. Okay, now let's look at the other end of the spectrum, the bottom of the list, Companies I, J, K, and L. Yeah, some of them are growing fast, but their revenue base is so small that they just aren't a threat to the middle of the pack next year. So we can set them aside too. And just like that, after clearing away all the noise, we're left with the signal. The real race for 6th place is happening right here among these 6 companies. This is the battleground. As far as our client's question is concerned, these are the only companies in the world that matter.
All right, we've defined our battleground. Now it's time for the fun part. Let's do the math. We're going to project out what year 3 is going to look like for these companies so we can figure out exactly what it's going to take for our client to win.
So who was the culprit? Who's the one that knocked our client down a peg? A quick look at the data shows it was Company G. They started at the same revenue as us, but their insane 20% growth rate let them just leapfrog right over our client. So the mission becomes incredibly simple. To get back to 6th place, we have to end year 3 with more revenue than Company G. So let's figure out where Company G's finish line is going to be. We take their year 2 revenue, which is $720 million, we apply that 20% growth rate we know they have, and that gives us a projected year 3 revenue of $864 million. That right there, that is the number to beat. And what's really cool is when we project out the entire battleground, you can start to see how next year is going to shape up.
Company D is still ahead. No surprise there. But look who's holding that sixth spot. Yep, just like we thought, it's Company G, sitting right at $864 million. The race is now crystal clear.
So, the target is set, and based on our assumptions, this isn't a guess, it's a mathematical certainty. To reclaim that number 6 spot, our client's revenue has to cross that $864 million line.
Okay, we've done the hard work. We segmented the market, we did the calculations. Now it's time to bring it all home and deliver the final answer to the client, plain and simple.
So what does more than $864 million actually mean for our client? Well, they're starting year 3 with $660 million. To get over that target, they need to add, over $204 million in new revenue. Just to be safe and clear, let's call it a target of $205 million in absolute growth.
And what does that mean as a growth rate? Well, you take that $205 million in new revenue, you divide it by their starting base of $660 million, and you get a required growth rate of 31.1%. Just let that sink in for a second. They grew by 10% last year. Now they need to grow by more than triple that rate.
And this right here is where the whole conversation changes. We've answered the client's question with a precise number, but a consultant's real value isn't just in giving the what, it's in helping them figure out the how. This number, 31.1%, it's not the end of the project. It's really the starting pistol for all the hard work that comes next. So what we've really done is transform a vague feeling of we're falling behind into a concrete, quantifiable challenge. Hitting 31.1% growth is a huge ask. It's going to require a major shift in strategy. So the question we leave the client with isn't what they need to do, it's how they're going to do it. Where is all that growth going to come from? And that, my friends, is the multi-million-dollar question. Thanks for working through this case with me.